My name's Zach Wienersmith. I draw a comic called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. I'm here from the United States, and I was wondering, could I stay? We're gonna talk about Boffice in a minute, but I have to pitch my book at you real quick. Just, hey, look, I got a book. And it's out through Particular Books with Penguin, and some of them are here tonight somewhere, so if you could just... Cool. If you could just be like, go up to them and tell them you'll buy 1,000 books apiece, that would really work for me. Actually, I calculated if like every person in this room just bought 500 books, then I'd have like loads of money. So I'm going to get to Boffice in a sec. I just wanted to say while I was here, I really appreciated the London culture because if something happened in the U.S. at Congress, we would still be freaking out and running around in the streets screaming. And everyone here was totally back to business the next day. I think in the U.S. we would have invaded Iraq by now. Maybe Mexico, I don't know. Yeah. So let's talk about Boffice. We have a new trophy this year we're really excited about. So we had been doing shows on evolution and big science, so-called. And we switched to an open theme format, so everybody can do any topic about science or tech they want. But the problem is we used to do a Darwin trophy and an Edison trophy, and it just wasn't appropriate. So our new trophy it's on the table. It's by the water, I think. It's a guy named Hennig Brand. Anyone heard a cough? Thank you. So Hennig Brand was a 17th century alchemist. He discovered phosphorus. And the way he discovered it was by boiling his own urine. And he thought he was going to find gold. And that's... the logic is manifest. But one of the neat things about this story is he had this whole protocol for how to boil urine into phosphorus, and it just turns out there was a step in the protocol where he actually removed most of the phosphorus. So the fact that it worked is because he screwed up his own experiment. And so the point is, though, he had like the wrong theory and the wrong experiment, and he boiled his pee all day long, and he still contributed a box to the periodic table, which none of us will do. And that's why he's our mascot. Oh, and the trophy it's modeled on a famous painting I wrote it down, called The Alchemist in Search of the Philosopher's Stone. And I encourage you to look it up because it's him boiling a flask of something. And there's these two assistants of his looking on in the background, and they're like, wow. But, once you know the context, you know what they're wowing about. And it's not so very impressive. Well, anyway, it's about time for the show, and I wanted to thank you for coming tonight. It's always an honor for me to be here at Imperial. I was told it's the nerdiest university in Britain. And yeah, I've not in any way been dissuaded of that while I've been here. So, for real, thank you very much, and I'll give the stage to Richard.
Hello. It's you have to adjust your applause accordingly for the time it takes everyone to get around the. It was like, it's a long walk, isn't it? I don't even know who he is. Hello, my name's Richard. I'll be your host for the evening, which basically just means I'm going to do a very short bit of chatting to you between the acts and the performers and who you've really come to see, the brilliant scientists, science thinkers, maniacs, who are going to put forward some of their hypotheses. Didn't study science or English at university, so I'm largely out of my depth entirely in talking this evening, but we'll see how it goes. It's going to be fantastic. So people are going to come up, and it's going to be wonderful. And before I get started, does anyone here like know who I am? Wow. I mean, you don't have to know who I am. Just it's easy to know when you do something like this, like who knows who you are, because when you do a performance for a living, it's always interesting to know, like, how, because people come up to you, my favourite question when you say, what do you do? I do a comedian, I do acting. They go, are you famous? Which is a brilliant question, because if you have to ask someone, they're not famous. But I found out recently how famous I actually am, because I tried to go on the TV show Pointless. Because I'm a big fan of love TV quizzes, particularly Pointless. Unless, of course, the last round's not about films, then I just go and put the kettle on and wait to watch the chase on +1. But I wanted to go on Pointless. They said, you can't come on Pointless because you're too famous. You're too famous. Because I've done, like, some telly and some adverts. If you need someone to say 4 lines in one episode of a sitcom, I'm your man. Particularly if that person is fat and all the jokes can be about that works out perfectly for everyone. They said, you can't come on Pointless because you're too famous. So I said, can I go on Celebrity Pointless? And they said, no one has any idea who you are. So that's how famous I am. Too famous for Pointless, not famous enough for Celebrity Pointless. I've no idea what letter of the alphabet that listed, that is I'm on, but probably very, very low. It's great to be here doing some stuff. As I say, I'm not particularly, I like science, but I don't really know anything about it. Literally the only thing I remember from school is the formula for photosynthesis. That's literally all I remember. C6H12O6? Yes! Fucking hell. Yes, that's your tax money in action. I was one of the kids who spent most of the time trying to sort of burn the plastic on the Bunsen burner tubes. And set fire to all the I don't know if you have those anymore. Maybe you just do it with lasers. I have no idea what you do. When I was there, it was a rubbish Essex school, so it was lots of vandalism basically in science. No learning, just burning everything. Brilliant. I've got one science joke that I can do. I can do that now. Get it out of the way, then we can get the decent people going. But I've got one science joke. True story. I've been trying to create my own universe at home, but just haven't got the time or the space. Yes! Yes! No, I was going to say, so do you all students here? Give me a cheer if you're students here. Oh, my word. Give me a cheer if you're not students here. Oh, give me a cheer. Comparing. No, so, yes. So, would you say, because you're all into science and stuff, would you say, you're good at technology? No. Are you bad at technology? Are you like me, where you basically just have to use technology all the time, and you just basically have to just muddle through regardless? Yeah, because I'm a bit like that. Compared to my mum and dad, I'm the Matrix. Because I can type with 10 digits and text with 2 thumbs. My dad's basically he's a very earnest finger. I don't know if your dad, my daddy, remote control, mobile phone, anything, he's... Seven minutes later, you get a reply, okay. And also, he doesn't understand punctuation marks. Obviously, in real life he does, but when he's got a mobile phone, he doesn't even understand it. So I get texts from him going, I'm outside? ? Are you? That's like I've got Schrodinger's dad. And also, he doesn't understand the difference between 3D and 3G. He thinks it's like an iPhone thing, and every year they bring out a new one. So last week he tried to buy a 3D Kindle. Came out with a book. It was fine. So you see, lovely. One of the things I like to do whenever I do anything, regardless of whether it's suitable or not, is I like everyone to shout out some film quotes occasionally. Because I'm a massive fan of films, particularly science fiction films. So we'll try and think of some stuff for you to share. So what I'm going to do is just to sort of get you all it's going to get some fucking hypotheses going. What I'd like you to do after 3 is, in your best Brian Blessed impression, I want you to shout out, Gordon's alive, really loudly, like you've just found out Gordon's alive and you can't believe it. If you don't know how the quote goes, it goes like this: Gordon's alive! So after 3, if you could all do that, that would be amazing. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Gordon's alive! That's frankly erotic. That was amazing. So we're going to get started. Well, so we'll have a keynote lecture in a moment, but first we're going to hear from last year's winner, Matt Allinson. Matt Allinson is a science communicator who lives in London. His PhD focused on reducing the cost of solar panels by making them out of highly toxic carcinogens that dissolve in rainwater. He was one of the winners of Barfest 2016 with the slightly less ridiculous idea that the Kardashian sisters were a reliable source of graphene. He has also given talks at the Royal Institution, Einstein's Garden at Greenman Festival and Wikimania 2015. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Allinson!
Shame on you all for laughing at the part of that wasn't a joke, that was the actual description of what my PhD was. Thank you very much, Richard. Actually, just on the note of you were talking about being at school and how you didn't really learn anything, and it was just wanton violence. I did a chemistry PhD at Imperial, and it was exactly the same thing. Setting fire to the plastic on Bunsen burners never gets old. So my name is Matthew Allinson, and I am talking to you today. I'm not going to look at that way because you can't hear me when I do that. My name is Matthew Allinson, and I'm talking to you today about making sense of the unmakesensable by applying scientific principles. Now, give us a cheer if that sounds exciting to you. Now also, give me a cheer if you don't like Brexit. You're about to witness 5 minutes of a man shooting fish in a barrel. Because today I am talking about Brexit. Now, Brexit is a funny, exciting thing that is going on in the world. There's a lot of scary things happening in the world. Last year, about exactly this time last year, I had just submitted my PhD thesis and I won Barfest, and I thought to myself, you know what, Matt? 2016 is looking like it's shaping up to be a really fun year. And it turned out, like a lot of my PhD thesis, I was thoroughly wrong. But anyway, Brexit. Brexit happened on last year. We managed to get a source of great EU puns. This was the Sun from the day. The Sun is a newspaper famous for printing pictures of tits. And here we are celebrating Brexit. And the thing with Brexit is that there's a lot of questions about Brexit. What's Brexit going to do? What's Brexit going to be like? And there's lots of answers to that. Because say the day Brexit happened, if you're a scientist, you like to turn to graphs for solutions to problems. And this was obviously a big graph that came out the day after Brexit. This is the pound versus some really strong foreign currencies. This is the Venezuelan bolivar. This is a country where currently, in a weird twist of the French Revolution, making cake is currently illegal. This is the Zimbabwean dollar versus the pound. This is on the day of Brexit, I got a text from my Zimbabwean friend who was like, "My $1,000 trillion note is finally coming into some value." And this is the pound versus the Somali shilling. There are two things I love about the Somali shilling. The first is the fact it's good that there were no British pirate hostages at the time of Brexit, because that is the last thing you need in a hostage negotiation, the fact that the price is going to jump by 30% because of weird currency fluctuations. And my other favourite thing about this is the fact that the pound actually started dropping quite long before the vote. And in my mind, there is the one foreign exchange trader in Mogadishu dodging like mines and drones, thinking, you know what, I think Nigel Farage has got this. I'm going to short the pound, and look at the money he made. But anyway, so graphs can tell you about the effects of Brexit, but financial graphs don't really tell you what Brexit means. So I propose that we're going to do a scientific analysis of what Brexit means to try to get to the bottom of it. Now, this question, I think you might all know the answer before we get to it, but there's a famous question, what does Brexit mean? And the answer to this question is...
First, Brexit means Brexit.
Let's hear that again.
First, Brexit means Brexit.
That's absolutely right, Teresa. Brexit means Brexit. Now, you might say that is a completely pointless phrase that has no understanding. It means nothing. It's completely vacuous political waffling. I wouldn't say that
because I'm not fully English and I don't want the right-wing press to come after me. So what I propose is Brexitology, which is a scientific study of Brexit, which I'm going to do for you today. So first off, and this is me. I'm acutely aware one of the judges this evening is Tom Welton, who was the head of the chemistry department when I was a chemistry PhD student here. This wasn't filmed. This wasn't taken here. So that's me doing some Brexit. We're going to do some Brexit on.
First, Brexit means Brexit.
So, Brexit means Brexit. How are we going to analyse this scientifically? Well, to start off, I'm going to turn to mathematics. So, let's make Brexit a constant. We'll call it beta, because firstly, does anyone else see I don't know if I just have like a memory where I assign shapes to other shapes. I've always think that beta looks a bit like England. You've kind of got Cornwall, you've got East Anglia, and you've got like Aberdeen up here. Anyway, beta, Brexit, that's where we are. Beta is Brexit. So given Brexit means Brexit, any function f of Brexit also equals Brexit. So f of a beta equals beta, f of b beta equals beta, so on, f of z. Infinite series of functions of Brexit will equal Brexit. Therefore, one more? There we go. Therefore, Brexit is equal to the union of all functions of Brexit. That is a self-similar set. Self-similar sets. You might know a lot. Any mathematicians in the crowd might already be sniggering because I can see where I'm going with this. Self-similar sets. This is one of those suspicious European chaps called Helg von Koch, with one of those suspicious, humorously European names. He came up with one of these self-similar sets. If you plot this self-similar set, it is a fractal. Self-similar sets are a topolographically fractal. So as you zoom in on them, you can see it's actually the same shape repeated all the way down. This gets very mesmerizing. I feel like I'm at a Derren Brown show, and I am in fact Derren Brown. I need to all stand up and rob banks and stuff. But anyway, we'll stop away from this. Because if we consider that Brexit is a self-sustaining set, if you actually look really closely at the word Brexit, you'll notice the dot above the I is in fact just the word Brexit. The dot above that I is also just the word Brexit. The Brexit is fractal. Brexit means Brexit. The sum of all states of Brexit is Brexit. Brexit is actually just a fractal quantity. Scientifically, what can we draw from this? We can draw that Brexit is going to spiral on forever and ever. Downwards forever. So we've applied some mathematics to Brexit. Let's see what else we can do. So what else do we know about Brexit? Well, we know that.
Red, white, and blue Brexit.
That's absolutely right. Did we hear that at the back? Let's get that again, Teresa.
It's about a red, white, and blue Brexit.
One more time. I love that phrase. She's doing it on an aircraft carrier. How more basically politically can you get?
It's about a red, white, and blue Brexit.
That's right. It's about a French Brexit, or an American Brexit, or a Dutch Brexit. No. It's about a red, white, and blue Brexit. Now, you might again think that this is a completely meaningless, completely vacuous statement. They're like red, white, and blue Brexit because arbitrary imaginary concepts cannot have colour. Except in the world of quantum chromodynamics, where they can and do. Quantum chromodynamics is invented by Murray Gell-Mann, who's a kind of a cool dude from the Los Alamos era, and it describes a quantity of quarks. If you take everything on planet Earth, for example, Afghan hounds, they are made, and other things, are made of molecules. Afghan hounds and other things made of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. Atoms have a nucleus within them. In those nuclei, you have protons and neutrons are made of quarks. There's something called the Fermi exclusion principle, which states that subatomic particles, or any particles really, which have exactly the same properties can't be too closely together because they drive each other apart. That's why if you have magnets, then they repel each other, sort of. But just realised like some physicists going to comment in the comments like, actually, I quite like Brexit. No, so to get around that, some Japanese physicists in the 50s came up with this thing called color charge, which is that quarks of the same charge can exist together because they have the same color charge. That is applying color to arbitrary imaginary events. There Brexit is made of quarks. Now, what type of quarks was it made of? I forgot I added that.
It's about a red, white, and blue Brexit.
A red, white, and blue Brexit. That is absolutely right. Red, white, and blue are the type of quarks we are after. Now, white combination of quarks exist everywhere in nature. You are, and Afghan hounds, and this table, and this clicker are all made up of white. Quark combinations are baryons. A white Brexit is very easy. All we need to do is However, red and blue quark combinations don't exist for very long in nature at all. To make those, you actually need to build the Large Hadron Collider. Another suspicious European thing. So we can't obviously use the European one, even though only a little bit of it's in France, the other bits of it in Switzerland. We sort of like Switzerland now because, anyway, whatever. So we need to build our own Large Hadron Collider, which will obviously cost us £13 billion. So we can draw another conclusion that Brexit is going to cost an inordinately large amount of money and take up an incredibly huge amount of energy for what is ultimately a pointless and short-lived task. Now, what else do we know about Brexit? Brexit could take up to 10 years. Brexit is complex. So what do we know about complex things? Complex numbers have the form a plus b I. A and b are both real numbers. I is the square root of minus... the square root of minus 1. Not squared, I just added that squared sign for no reason. The first and only unscientific thing you'll see in this talk. Anyway, the square root of minus 1 is called the imaginary number. So if Brexit is complex, Brexit contains imaginary numbers. But also, because it contains the square root of an integer, it also contains irrational figures, such as, click, hey! So a conclusion we can draw from this is Brexit is full of irrational and imaginary numbers. Now, what else do we know about Brexit? My final one, we focus a lot on the hard sciences. We've focused a lot on the physics and the maths. So let's focus on the social anthropologists. And they'll take that, social anthropologist. So, the social anthropology of Brexit. This is a map of all the areas. Red denotes voted for Brexit, and the darkness of the red is how much they hate foreigners. Freedom. And the dark red on this map is how likely they are to die. These are, I haven't made these up, these are real. We can go on. Of the 30 areas with the most elderly people, 27 voted leave. Here is how likely you are by age to vote for Brexit, and here how likely it is by age that you are to die this year. Brexit was won by 1 million, whatever that number. So there's roughly 500,000 deaths per year. Let's assume 65% of them were Brexit fans. That's 325,000 deaths. Let's assume 75% of them actually voted for Brexit. The national turnout was 71%, but it was actually up to 80% in the higher age group, so sort of average that out at 75. So it's about 243,000, 750,000 deaths of Brexit voters per year. So let's plot that on the graph. That's where it's going to happen this week. So Brexit, Article 50 is this week. So Brexit is there. 5 years after Brexit happens, the majority of people alive in the UK will have voted Remain. Didn't get a laugh for that one. But there is one proviso to that. Obviously, we're going to get £350 million a week more for the NHS, aren't we? Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's get a source on that.
£350 million a week we send to the EU, which we will no longer send to the EU. Can you guarantee that's going to go to the NHS?
No, I can't.
In conclusion, Brexit is going to spiral on forever and ever. Brexit is going to use an inordinately large amount of money and resources. Was ultimately the point to start. Brexit is irrational and full of imaginary numbers. By the time Brexit is done and dusted, the majority of the people alive won't have voted for it. Applying science to Brexit does not teach us anything we didn't know. Thank you very much for listening. My name's Matt Allinson. Have a lovely evening.
Amazing. Now we move on to our second keynote lecture, this time from Tom Scott. Tom Scott bodges things together with video editing tools, lines of code, and meters of network cable. 700,000 people subscribe to him on YouTube for videos about science, technology, and interesting things in the world. As a speaker and event host MC, Tom's knowledge, sense of humour, and thought-provoking style means he's spoken at the Eurovision TV Summit in Switzerland, every Thinking Digital since 2009, and to the Conference on Parliament and the Internet. Tom once interviewed Edward Snowden via video link, asked an inappropriate question, and learned that, yes, Snowden does bother to wear trousers even when it's only in a head and shoulders in the camera shots. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tom Scott!
So I've just learned that my speaking agent sent through my bio for this one, so that's good. Hello. My name is Tom Scott, and when I was younger, although still old enough that I should have known better, I sent one of the most harsh messages that I've ever sent in my life. And I'm not proud of it, but I'm going to share part of it with you. I've blocked you everywhere else, and now I'm going to block you here too. My only regret is that I can't block you in real life. Younger me was a dick. I couldn't block them in real life, because I'll still see them walking around, right? They're still going to get invited to roughly the same events. They're still going to be in the same kind of circles. And it's going to be awkward, particularly after I send a message like that. And some folks would say that I should just make peace with the fact that some people disagree with others, that some personalities clash, that some people are jerks. But then I thought, what if we use technology instead? So here's my proposal. Let's block people in real life. Now, okay, the technology is not here yet, right? Science fiction has talked about this for a long, long time, and it's generally shown as fuzzing someone out. But that just wouldn't work. Even if you have some form of smart contact lenses, and even if the other person does too, that's not useful. There's still a big grey block there. You still know they're there, and a big grey block of mosaic can still punch you in the face. But there is already a better algorithm than this. There is content-aware fill, which is what Photoshop uses to subtly remove an object from a photograph, right? I was in that photo originally. That's the original, just there. But now it's trivial to just track an object, build a mask around it, and paint it out. And that first shot, you didn't notice the doubled-up bush in the middle there. Looks perfectly natural. And Facebook does facial recognition already, okay? That's a photo of me and some friends. It could do that for photos. It could track based on a face. Could even probably do this for video about now, although there is the problem that without enough data around it, does tend to get a little bit Cronenberg. It's not great. But in the next few decades, we are going to see large amounts of technology that is getting better and better at interfacing with the mind. Because to start off with, I mean, the technology is going to help an increasingly aging population deal with senescence. We've been using deep brain stimulation to help with tremors from diseases like Parkinson's for decades. That paper is from 2006, and spoiler, or as we call it here, abstract, it works. And we've already got people controlling robot arms with brain implants and exoskeletons with EEG caps. Now, of course, no one is working on a neural lace yet. Oh, no, wait, of course, Elon Musk is working on a neural lace. Because Elon Musk is working on everything that Ian Banks ever wrote about. So let's say it works. Let's say that we get brain-computer connections that roll out to the population at large over the next century. Things that actually get into the structure of the brain. I'm willing to bet that most of humanity won't descend into virtual worlds or endless stimulation, because virtual reality still won't be popular for anything other than kind of gimmicky and clunky games. People still have to work. People still have to exist in the real world and have real interactions. And, okay, so visually, the uncanny valley has pretty much been solved now, right? That's from the latest Pirates of the Caribbean trailer. That's young Johnny Depp there, being played by Johnny Depp. And every Disney film lately, every live-action one, has got some incredible, rejuvenated actor. But I'll bet there's a similar uncanny valley problem for human interactions, right? You can't simulate a human personality without simulating something that's pretty close to human, and that would be unethical even if it was possible, although I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg will try at some point. But you could hijack the vision center. You could teleport to a remote office by telling your implant you want to go there, and you'd be edited in to the perceptions of people who are there, and your own vision would be replaced with what you'd see. Sure, it's not going to be perfect, but as oil gets more and more expensive and flight prices go up, that's going to be a hell of a lot better than a teleconference. But if you can edit people into places, you can probably edit them out as well. You could block people or things. They just cease to exist for you, and you'd cease to exist for them, quietly edited out of each other's worlds. And those implants, those implants could use the same sort of hacks that your brain uses itself to quietly and subtly skip over things that you don't care about, or stop memories from forming, or quietly root past an obstacle without even seeing it. If you walked here like this, then congratulations, because your brain used all those hacks already to make sure you didn't bump into anyone on the way. You didn't notice the bin, but you just quietly walked around it. And by the time we get to this, someone who doesn't have an implant will look a little bit weird anyway, same as someone without a smartphone does now, right? And increasingly, they'll be lost in a twilight zone where they can't really get anyone else's attention. And sure, there will occasionally be unsolvable clashes. There will be bits of human ingenuity that get past all the systems. Cost me a lot of money to get that photo made. But in general, people will be okay with this, right? Because blocking someone isn't massively offensive. You won't be notified of it, and besides, who notices when someone quietly vanishes? No one here could tell me who the last person to unfriend them on Facebook was, because you weren't notified of it, and just means that annoying person has stopped showing up in your stream. So once we're happy with that, the technology will keep getting better and better and better. People will start sharing block lists. Algorithms will get developed so that you can block things subconsciously, automatically, based on whatever your mind flinches away from. People, shops, homes, whole cities, all subtly edited out of each other's perceptions from anyone who's on the other side of a virtual wall, all sorted by mass consensus. And, okay, China Mabel sort of talked about this in The City and the City, but his two worlds only ignored each other through etiquette and tradition and occasionally violent enforcement. Tourists just had to fit in. There'd be no need for that. It'd all be done for you right away. Rather than go to war, feuding nations can just block each other. Right? Their citizens' implants can just be legally mandated to edit out Russia. Even that won't solve the Middle East crisis, but it will at least make it a bit quieter for everyone next door. Imagine separate crowds of people all walking down the same street, all slipping past each other by mutual, unknown, unspoken agreement mediated by implant. And maybe in some places, until you're an adult, you won't even get told that the other worlds exist. Before that, it's just a rumour between children. It's an explanation for ghost stories and things that go bump in the night. Some people might switch their implant settings and visit another world to see what it's like. I'm willing to bet no one's going to do that more than once. And I could look out at a full auditorium, like I'm doing now, but I wouldn't know if that's true. I wouldn't know if my eyes are gliding over the people from another world. And someone else could be giving a talk at the same time on the same stage, and you would just quietly edit them out, and I would just walk and talk around them. They'll say that there are people out there who've blocked everyone, and we'll never know. But there are going to be some people out there who hate the idea of implants. And sure, they've had to get them for work, or maybe they were just assigned one when they were a child. But the idea doesn't sit well with them. The idea that what's coming into their head isn't the true reality isn't something they want to acknowledge. So what happens if implants edit out the idea of implants from people who have them? And how would that be any different from sitting in this room right now, immediately dismissing all this as science fiction? All right? I think you're all paying attention to me, and you think I'm giving a talk. But who knows? Oh, ignore that itch behind your left ear. It's probably nothing. My name's Tom Scott. Have a good night.
Tom Scott! Fantastic. Well, I've just remembered I was remiss in doing some safety information. If anything happens, it won't happen, but just in case, there are some emergency exits here, and at the back. So make sure you're aware of where those are in case anything happens. It won't happen, but now you know. It's not my fault. And also, you should be paying attention, but if any of you feel the need to text or tweet about this, remember the hashtag is BarFest. And that's mainly for people who are watching at home on the live feed. But if you want to disrespect the performers, feel free to use that hashtag as well. Use capitals maybe, hashtag BarFest. Fill your boots. Dealer's choice. We're going to get the proper thing started now, which is very exciting. I'm going to explain, for those of you who haven't been before, I'm going to explain the rules of the game. We're going to have 6 speakers who are going to come, and they're competing for the best ad hoc hypothesis award, which is going to get the lovely statue of the man boiling his own urine, which is obviously what we're all here for. Now, after each speaker finishes, they will be questioned by some judges who will soon materialise. And they will ask them anything about their hypothesis, and they must do their best to answer. After all the speakers have spoken, each of the judges will rate their top 3 talks. There's a top rating is 3 points, the second best is 2 points, and the third best is 1 point. And then we will also, at the end to make sure, we will take a decimeter reading from you, the audience, on how you reacted to the speakers. In case there's a tie or something, then we have your opinion. Because your opinion does matter. It does matter. It does. And the winner is the person with the most points, which is very, very, very straightforward, as rules go. Whoever gets most points wins. Seems fair. I'm just checking there's not some weird science thing where you go, no, that's not how it works. Just checking. And obviously, then the winner gets that. So before we bring up the speakers hoping to win that prize, I'm going to introduce you to the judges that they are hoping to impress. Will you please, as I mentioned them, as they come to the stage, will you please welcome them with love and adoration and respect and any other feelings they may conjure up in you. Hopefully positive ones. So first up, we have our first judge is Jen Gupta. Yes. I'll give you Jen is an astrophysicist and a science communicator based in the south of England. She works at the University of Portsmouth, where she is the SEPNet Ogden Outreach Officer for the Institute of Cosmology and Gravitation, responsible for their outreach and public engagement programme. In her spare time, Jen can be found presenting the Seldom Serious podcast and helping to organise the Winchester Science Festival. Over the past 8 years, her science communication journey has found her lecturing at the Royal Institution, performing astronomy-themed stand-up in front of 500 people, giving talks at schools in India and becoming the BBC Radio 5 Live's go-to astronomer to comment on space news stories, but only at unsociable hours. She was a keynote speaker at Barfest in 2016, where she fixed all of the world's problems using big data. There she is. Brilliant! Yeah, round of applause. Our next judge we have is Simon Singh. There you go. Simon Singh is an ex-particle physicist, current science writer, and future corpse. His books include Fermat's Last Theorem, The Code Book, and The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets. He was born in Somerset, lives in London, and will be cremated in Iceland. Won't we all? The next judge we have, will you please welcome Helen Keane. Helen Keane is an award-winning comedy writer and performer. She began her career by winning the first Channel 4 New Comedy Writing Prize and wrote for various established TV and radio shows. Credits include guest spots on Radio 4's Infinite Monkey Cage and touring with the Uncaged Monkeys, and on Radio 4's Museum of Curiosity. My printer's broken, so I can't read all of it. I'm incredibly sorry, but her first solo stand-up show, It Is Rocket Science, launched 3 critically acclaimed series on BBC Radio 4 and won a slew of awards. Her first radio documentary, Finding Your Voice, about selective mutism, was nominated for a Mind Media Award, and a new comedy series, Big Problems with Helen Keane, debuted at the 6:30pm spot on Radio 4. In 2015, she was selected as a 2015 Wired Innovation Fellow. In 2016, her first book, The Science of Game of Thrones, was published in the US and the UK. Helen Keane. And now, at our final judge, we have Mr. Tom Welton. Tom is Dean of Imperial's Faculty of Natural Sciences and Professor of Sustainable Chemistry. He isn't quite an Imperial College lifer. He studied at the University of Sussex. but he has been here for over 20 years. And when he isn't in his office or his lab, he can be found walking on fire for charity just by Queen's Tower. There's the end. Tom Welton, everybody. So, judges, you ready to hear some hypotheses?
Hypotheses.
Hypotheses. I just wait. Yeah, everyone's been really. I can't wait to correct him. He's been sitting there. He's got no idea. He's not been paying any attention. He's just been livid the whole time I've been up here. So obviously, what are you hoping to see in the speaker's sort of content? Fear.
I've got a Sharpie, so I'm pretty happy now.
Okay.
It's done.
So it's going to be judged on affinity to Sharpiedom.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. So instead of 3 points, it can be Sharpies.
This is the winner for me.
That's the winner. So the winner is. It's already been announced. It's already going to be a Sharpie. That's already the prize. So are you hoping that it's going to be? Are you looking for more sort of science? Like, you're looking for the facts to speak for themselves? Are you hoping for passion? What's the sort of thing you're looking for most?
I'll tell you one thing I'm looking forward to. It was a pleasure seeing Matt Allinson win last year, and it was a double pleasure hearing him this year. He was absolutely fantastic, I thought. So if we have talks at the high standard we had last year, we'll have huge amounts of fun.
Splendid. I agree. So I'll move on. What we have now, it's time for our speakers are going to come up, and they're here to put forward their bad ad hoc hypotheses. It's not easy being a brilliant scientist and a great public speaker. I'm basing that solely on my GCSE teachers, so my data may be insufficient. But regardless, make sure whoever comes up, you give them love and support, and be strong, be lovely, be awesome. Because and also be prepared that some heavy, mind-blowing stuff is going to be laid at your feet. You may have to cope with some proper truth bombs being dropped. Be prepared to go down that rabbit hole. It's going to be incredible. So I'm going to get on now. Before we do, I'm going to have one last film quote to get everyone properly going. Ready? So this is going to do a quote from the film The 300, which is a brilliant, historically accurate movie. If you've not seen it, it's a comic book movie that justifies an illegal war against Persia. It's quite dodgy, politically speaking, but it is really violent, so it swings and roundabouts. It's good, because how when they did the Passion of the Christ, they decided they'd do it old school, have everyone speaking Aramaic and stuff. Well, they did the same thing. They thought, we'll do classical Greek stuff, we'll make sure everyone speaks Scottish. So it's really good. So everyone from ancient Greece is then Sparta will fight in the shade. Where are you from? Where are you? Sparta upon Tweed. So in a minute, I'm going to get you to shout out, "This is Sparta," really loudly. This is Sparta. Imagine this is Sparta. That's how I want you to do it. If you don't know how the quote goes, "This is Sparta," it goes like this: "This is Sparta!" So if you could do that after 3, that would be amazing. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This is Sparta! You guys are awesome. So first up, our first speaker is, we have Simon Watt. Simon Watt is a biologist, science presenter, and president of the Ugly Animal Preservation Society. Quite right. We all need some love. You can find him trying to redesign our species on his comedy science podcast, Level Up Human. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Simon Watt.
Ladies and gentlemen, we tend to think of evolution as being a slow process, something that takes millions of years, but that is simply not always true. Evolution can be rapid under the right circumstances, and I believe that I have observed a new sea creature at the start of a speciation event. In Paris's poshest restaurant, in an enormous fish tank, in a novelty toy castle, there lives the ugly lobster. The ugly lobster is the smallest, weediest, ugliest lobster in the world. It is spotty and cross-eyed, its tail is wonky, its claws don't match, its antennae are limp. It may have all the features that make up a face, but not one of them is in quite the right place. How did the merciless rigors of evolution create such a pathetic creature? The answer to this peculiar mystery lies in the lobster's home, its habitat. The ugly lobster lives in its fish tank with its close relative, the common lobster, and a solitary sea snail called Pierre. The common lobster, well, these lobsters, they get by quite fine. They have no difficulty in finding food. They're fed by kitchen staff. Previous studies have found that in the wild, lobsters are hunted and eaten by predators and some kinds of fish, squid and the like. In this environment of the fish tank, in the environment of the fish tank, the lobster has only one predator, humans. Homo sapiens who can afford to spend euros, 70 euros, that's roughly 70 pounds post-Brexit vote, on lobsters served on a very large plates with creamy mashed potatoes and flavoured with spring onions. The key here is that this restaurant is posh, and I don't mean like Viennetta posh, okay? I mean like, hat as part of your school uniform posh. I mean, tax avoidance posh, The kind of posh that can actually afford to go to university, yes? Now, one of the things that makes this restaurant posh, you see, other than aloof waiters and small meals and big plates, is that rich people get to choose what dies. It's like a conservative government. Diners get to choose which lobsters they eat. And because they're paying too much, they're looking for the biggest, juiciest lobster that they can spot. Fussy patrons in these restaurants are very picky about what they eat, and so only ever select the healthiest looking lobsters, meaning that they overlook those that are a bit diseased, unhealthy, or simply a bit wrong. They now outlive these buff lobsters. The ugly lobster had come into existence. It is now so small that the ugly lobster can hide inside the novelty toy castle, meaning that its safety is nearly guaranteed. Even Pierre the sea snail is not safe. After all, this tank is in France. Ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative that we stop this disgusting lobster. And you might ask, why? Does it matter? Am I really suggesting that we cull lobsters because of their looks? Do we really want to police the species? To remove individuals just because of fickle fashion and changing looks? No. We are not sugar babes. We are not pussycat dolls. But by continuing to eat lobsters for their meat, we find that we're removing those with the largest tails and claws, leaving behind those that are mostly head and brain. Without selection and beauty, they are likely evolving to be smarter. After all, they've already discovered that they can hole up inside a castle. Trebuchets are the next logical step. Observational evidence suggests that the more aesthetically challenged tend to be smarter. Several scholars, like Jeeves, have gone so far as to suggest that there may even be a theoretical framework whereby beauty is inversely proportional to intelligence, hence physicists. No, we should be afraid. They have got nipple clamps for hands. The lobsters, not the physicists. Furthermore, according to some recent research reported by an esteemed scientist in an esteemed periodical, or misquoted, the sun lobsters, they are immortal, meaning that they will likely be hard to kill and might even be good with swords. We could be facing an intelligent, deadly, and fugly foe. We must drive them into extinction before it is too late. We will fight them on the beaches. That's likely as far as they'll get. Brothers and sisters, it is essential that we fight back before they organize. I would recommend a lemon and garlic sauce. Thank you.
Any questions?
How many of these ugly lobsters would you expect to have per tank? Because I'm wondering about their reproduction.
The reproduction, I think you'll find that whatever happens behind the closed doors of a novelty toy castle is entirely between an ugly lobster and its fugly mate. So I'm afraid I just don't know. It is an unknowable. Is anyone from the floor?
I got a question quickly, if you want it. Question for you. Should we preferentially eat species that are very intelligent?
Yesterday, I was invited onto BBC Radio Scotland to talk about Gwyneth Paltrow. Because she is no longer eating octopus because she thinks they have more neurons than human brains. I think we should get intelligence enough not to listen to celebrity diets. And beyond that, it depends if the human's tasty or not, really. We all know there's a cutoff, isn't there? Everybody has one, Can I go now?
Simon Watt, ladies and gentlemen. Brilliant, brilliant. Next up, we have Louis Tyrell. Louis is studying for a physics degree here at Imperial in the hopes of legitimising his plans for world optimisation. Yeah. Oh, my God. I was going to say, it didn't seem like that harsh an intro. I mean, we all want to bring the house down, but yeah. See, can't argue with physics. Don't even know if that's the correct thing. Can we go? Yes, it's good, isn't it? I'll fill while they're doing it. I saw Interstellar. And I've come to the conclusion that Christopher Nolan is to sci-fi what my parents are to Wi-Fi. Sort of knows what it is, but the way he sets it up makes it really hard to connect to it. So I will continue the introduction and then I will maybe walk a little bit more lightly off the stage. I'm just saying, if you want to be in front of like 700 people and broadcast live on YouTube, nothing quite shatters your self-esteem like finding out you're too heavy to walk in front of a stationary object. It's fine. My mum loves me. It's fine. Next up, we have Louis Tyrell. Sorry, I think it's the third time I pronounced it incorrectly. I do apologise. Louis is studying for a physics degree here at Imperial in the hopes of legitimising his plans for world optimisation. Although his proposal to stop the Earth's rotation with asteroids was unsuccessful, this has not put him off from coming up with another perfect logical way to make the world a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, Louis Tyrell!
Good evening. I'm Louis Tyrell, as you might have heard, a physics undergraduate here at Imperial, and my talk is on why the Kessler Syndrome is key to humanity's future. Before I start, I do just have to point out that the views I'll be expressing aren't representative of the university or even myself. Now, there are no shortage of proponents for manned space exploration, ranging from Stephen Hawking to President Donald Trump. But why do we go to space? Is it for the benefits to science, the tech spin-offs that benefit life back down on Earth? Perhaps it's the inspiration that space provides to the next generation, or it could just be geopolitical posturing. Perhaps one of the best arguments for space colonization is that it would protect us from existential threats, such as asteroids or nuclear war. I propose that space is not worth it. In fact, that space exploration is actively detrimental for the future of humanity. And I have a solution. To begin with, though, just how convincing are those reasons? To quote the late Carl Sagan, you don't need to go to Mars to cure cancer. As for inspiring the youth and showing off to rival superpowers, it seems like actually going to space isn't worth the effort. You could just fake it, and nobody would be any the wiser. As for existential threats, if you're concerned about a rogue asteroid hitting Earth, it might seem like going to Mars is a great idea, but it's easy to forget just how hostile the rest of the solar system is. Unless that asteroid scores a direct hit on you, you're probably better off staying on Earth, which actually has a breathable atmosphere. Still, these are just the reasons why space travel gets too much hype and attention. I haven't even started on the negatives. Firstly, space travel is expensive, not just in terms of time, but also money and talent. For instance, Elon Musk could be working on the Hyperloop, a high-velocity, high-efficiency vacuum tube transport system that would finally make train spotting a cool hobby. Unfortunately, even he only has time to run maybe 2 world-changing projects at the same time. If we could somehow render spaceflight impossible, that would free him up to work on more down-to-earth ideas instead. Not only that, but even when space does become publicly available, the tickets aren't going to be cheap. The meek might inherit the Earth, but the rich will have other options. As you might imagine, that could cause some issues. To begin with, the amount of empathy you feel towards someone decreases with their distance to you. Others might try and tell you it's more complicated than that, but as a physicist, I can assert that empathy, like gravity and electromagnetism, follows an inverse square law. For instance, the amount of empathy I feel towards myself is obviously infinite. I feel about 100 times more empathy for the judges than I do for anyone sat on the back row, and it all goes downhill from there as you get further away. This only becomes more extreme when you go to space. Let's consider a hypothetical Martian colonist. They will feel approximately 1 million times more empathy for their fellow colonists than literally everyone else, including you and your fellow Earthlings. Needless to say, that could cause some friction in interplanetary negotiations. Additionally, at the moment, people do, at the very least, have to live on the same planet as everyone else. Right now, you might take issue with how the people in charge are running their businesses, or their countries, or in some cases, both at the same time. However, at the moment, they have to share a planet with everyone else. Imagine how much worse they could be if they knew they could escape to space before their actions catch up to them. Fortunately, there is a solution. The Kessler Syndrome describes a scenario in which objects in space collide, producing swarms of shrapnel that then go on to have more collisions themselves, like the world's most depressing domino run, and also in microgravity. These clouds of debris would orbit the planet for centuries, and they'd make space travel risky, if not impossible, which is perfect for our purposes. The trouble is, getting objects into space is hard, and it's not like existing space agencies would be willing to help us out with this, would they? Actually, they've done most of the work for us. Earth's currently orbited by thousands of pieces of debris, ranging from rocket stages to retired satellites. So there's not much more we really need to do. The main boosts have been from anti-satellite missile tests, which produce large amounts of fragmentation, and these are perfect for our purposes. The trouble is, these weapons are expensive. It's unlikely that any one of us here tonight would be able to afford to buy one on the black market. Fortunately, there are already a number of platforms dedicated to solving these kinds of financial coordination problems. Are you sick of hearing about global warming? Well, if you can get enough people together to raise funds, you can blast those pesky weather satellites out of orbit and never have to hear about it again. Do you hate hearing your GPS tell you where to go? Well, there's a simple solution. Just blow up the entire GPS system and everyone will be using paper maps again, just like the good old days. All you need to do is get enough nostalgics together to pool their resources. And if you think that telecoms are making everyone ruder, then there's a simple solution to this as well. You're not going to believe it, but this also involves blowing satellites out of the sky with missiles. That way, everyone will be sending politely worded letters to each other, just, again, like in the good old days. So, each of these, if funded by enough people with an interest in those projects, would be perfect for cutting off Earth from space forever, with a swarm of shrapnel in our orbit. Now, as a closing comment, I previously mentioned existential threats to humanity. Not only would this project prevent us from ever making the mistake of leaving Earth, but there's also an existential threat it would protect us from. Should aliens ever try to invade, it would also keep them out. Thank you for listening.
So, judges, any questions?
I'm just really worried that 60 million years ago there was a dinosaur standing where you are today. I've already seen a hall of dinosaurs and it may have just taken all of life.
I don't know about the fossil record, but...
I've got a question for you. Would it be worth blowing up the other planets just to be safe?
That's actually quite a good idea. Since currently our asteroid belt is a bit wimpy, it wouldn't actually do a very good job of preventing us from going either side of it. If we could blow up the other planets, though, that would beef it up a bit with a few more rings of dangerous rocks for spacecraft to crash into. So yes, that would work as an added deterrent.
Yeah. Is there the irony of blowing up debris to make more debris? Is that something that you are excited about?
Well, I suppose fragmentation in space, it's kind of a renewable resource.
What would you do to get the astronauts off the space station first, before you let fly your terror?
That's a good question. Ideally, we'd get them on board with the scheme, since if they can just plant explosives on the ISS, that would be a lot more efficient than having to turn the rocket up ourselves. And that way they'd be more than willing to go down afterwards as well.
You do seem to have failed to have noticed that every technique you use for not going into space involves going into space.
That's a price I'm willing to pay.
It's a bit like Godzilla. Sometimes to defend Tokyo, you have to destroy Tokyo. Anything else? No? Well, brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done. Yes. Fantastic. Hang on a second. I feel like Indiana Jones trying to get other bits of sand as I was walking along there. Next up, we have Phillippa Skett. Phillippa is the manager of press and communications at the Royal Society of Biology. When she's not tweeting about crabs, she's being bullied into pitching terrible science comedy routine ideas by Matt Allinson because, mate, what's the worst that can happen? She could actually end up on stage delivering it to an audience of people, Matt. That's what could actually end up happening. This is all your fault. I didn't. She wrote that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Phillippa Skett.
Hello, my name's Phillippa Skett, and a quick disclaimer before I start. I'm not actually a scientist, as you heard there. I work in comms. I did actually do a degree here at Imperial. I did biology, but I got the lowest percentage you can get before you drop a degree class and become unemployable. So I'm not the most qualified when it comes to science. When it comes to scientific research, it's not ideal either. I once got caught bribing my lab partner to eat Drosophila larvae for a bet. I don't know why I'm here, to be honest. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, I'm not actually a scientist, but I'm actually also going to pitch this in terms of wanting money, which obviously drives science. And I've never actually done any sort of grant proposal before either. But I'm sure it's very similar to this, you know, audience of hundreds of people, Saturday night, 2 shots of vodka in. Let's see how it goes. So my hypothesis is looking like any good hypothesis to somewhat force together 2 trends in the hope that it solves some sort of global crisis. Scientists nervously giggle there. And the 2 trends I'm looking to address are the depletion of non-renewable energy resources, but also the rise of social media. This comes back to the tweeting crabs thing, because if there's a job in it for me, I'm all for it. So let's look at some statistics first. And these are all real numbers. Computer literacy is growing, which is great. There are currently 2 billion personal computers owned worldwide, and this is only set to increase. More surprisingly, people are also using Twitter more. There are 319 million active Twitter users currently, which equates to around 6,000 tweets per second. Sadly, however, non-renewable resources are depleting, and this is also very real, despite it looking like I just made it on Excel 5 minutes ago. And you can see that something as fundamental as oil may deplete as early as 2052. There's another trend I want to address here, and it's one that I have made up, but I think it's still statistically relevant in this, and that it's people are getting angrier on social media. Here is Sean Spicer, as I'm sure you're all aware, he's the White House press secretary, whom I love because he makes me look good at my job. And you can see that people are getting angrier on social media, and considering the current political landscape, there will be Brexit jokes in this, just warning you, it is only set to get worse. So with this in mind, my hypothesis is looking to bring together these 4 trends and thinking, can we turn angry keyboard warriors on social media into a source of renewable energy? And I think that we can. So let's look at some models, and in specifically this one, the DSI ISO 9241 1994 keyboard model, which I'm sure you're all as related to as I am with this. And this model appears a lot in research to do with office ergonomics and RSI, because that is actually an important field that people look into. And it shows that there is actually only a little amount of energy required to press a key on a keyboard, but people are striking it so much harder than they need to. And you do a bit of complex maths and you find out there's actually a lot of wasted energy there with each keyboard strike. So can we do something with this? And I think that we can. And in fact, researchers are already working on it. And this is legit research as well, showing myself up here. And you can see that researchers not only have developed energy-generating keyboards, but they can do a lot more than just generate their own energy. These ones know who's typing on it based on the pattern of keystrokes. And there are also some being developed, and this is true, keyboards that self-clean. So if there's any Imperial students who know what Central Library's like, imagine having self-cleaning keyboards in there. Or don't, depending on if you know what students do in the Central Library. So what exactly am I asking you to give me money for today? We know the technology's there. We know the maths is pretty sound. It was just a simple subtraction. So what do I need funding for? And the problem is, even with the current social economic trends towards people getting angry on Twitter, with the timeline we're looking at, 2052, people aren't angry enough. So I want to induce these large-scale sociological models that would get people taking to Twitter more often and angrily bashing those keyboards in frustration. So one of the models I'm looking to develop is to get people more annoyed more frequently. We want to introduce these large-scale disturbances that will irritate people quite often, but not enough for them to get used to it. We want to introduce these temporary problems that'll get people frustrated and agitated and taking to Twitter to bitch about it. We have a name for this model. It's the temporary upheaval-based exercise or stimulation to reactively increase kinetic expenditure, or tube strike. When I do that the third time, you guys aren't going to find it as funny. So tube strike. Pilot studies have proven to be very effective, as I'm sure you're aware. But they're not quite doing it, and we need more frustration. So we're thinking about pilot studies looking into snow days, traffic jams, particularly emotive episodes of EastEnders. And that's one of the routes we're looking to go down. Another route is introducing topics into the public discourse, topics that are emotive and divisive and get people arguing more frequently. These topics we want to be sustainable. We want them to generate a lot of discussion over months and even years, so we can use them as a sustainable source of renewable energy. These topics, known as, prepare yourself, broadly repercussive and emotionally externally induced topics, or Brexit, will hopefully do just that, cause a lot of controversy online and discussions for years to come. Again, pilot studies into Brexit have proved fruitful, but not fruitful enough. So other ideas we're looking to consider is, for example, which Kardashian sister is the best, should Scotland leave the UK, is Tupac dead, that sort of thing. So that's what we're looking for funding for this model. But the last model that we're looking to put together, and is one that is by far, I think, going to be the most effective, is utilising the social media personalities that are already out there, creating very emotive content for us on a regular basis. So you can see here we've got a whole wide range of people, from journalists to politicians to Dawkins. And they're doing a great job already of posting great content frequently to get people agitated and annoyed. The only problem is they're not doing it enough at current levels. So the obvious answer here is to clone them. So we're looking for funding to put together a comprehensive cloning management program to take care of our celebrity clones and really generate that content that we need to keep our renewable energy sources coming. So this model is called the temperamental, resonating, unstable media personalities, or Trump amplification. And I know what you're thinking. Is she forcing these for laughs? And the answer is yes, I am. But also, will we be cloning Trump? And again, yes, that's what we're looking to do. And I know, it seems a bit weird that I'm asking you for money to produce more Trumps. But we think it could be the answer to the problem of renewable energy source generation. There are many issues with cloning, ethical and moral, that, to do with, is a clone a human? Do they have voting rights? Would you sleep with your own clone, etc.? But there are national security issues as well, which I'm sure you can imagine comes with having 1,000 Trumps running around, because one is bad enough. So we've done some research. We've watched the documentary The Island, which is a great summary of cloning management programs, and they found that if you put clones in a very safe and secure environment where they can learn and thrive and grow, they will eventually become viable enough for what you want them for, which in this case was to harvest their organs and steal their unborn children. It's a great film, by the way. I would recommend watching it. So with what we've learned from that, we've decided a Trump island is what we want funding for, where our Trumps can live and grow and thrive and live in this beautiful, narcissistic, egotistical, racist, and sexist utopia. They won't be doing a lot. They'll be just hanging around, not really saying anything, not really doing anything, playing golf, not that much different from what Trump's doing now. But we're hoping that this will be the great environment to kind of keep them away from the public and keep everyone safe, but also get that energy from them. We'll be introducing the latest VR technology to the island as well, which will induce fake scenarios that our Trumps can get angry about. These scenarios include women in power, equality motions, whether Robert Pattinson will get back with Kirsten Stewart. And we're hoping that these fake scenarios will bring out a lot of content for him to tweet angrily about and generate energy, but then for people to also get angry about in the real world. On a final note, I know one of the things people might be thinking is, well, how will the real world react to Donald Trump tweeting about what is fake news? And the answer is the real Donald Trump's doing this already. He's already commenting on things that haven't actually happened, and people are getting angry regardless. So on that note, thank you for listening. My Western Union details are available on request.
Excellent. Judges, any questions?
Where are you thinking of putting Trump Island? I think that's a great idea, but I'm just thinking location-wise might be a little controversial.
I mean, the best thing would be outside of somewhere where there's a large body of water, but anywhere that people don't really go, like Milton Keynes, would be... Wow, someone hates Milton Keynes over there, don't they?
What happens if you do eat Drosophila larvae?
So what happens is Steve Cook, the first-year tutor, appears from behind you and fails you, and then you have to resit first year. So that's what happens.
Sorry.
Steve Cook fans are out there, obviously.
So the frequent problem with renewable sources of energy is that the infrequency of their delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So what Angus storage device are you going to use?
I don't know, probably liberals online. They'll just keep turning it out. Any other questions?
How will it work? Will you have to factor in the removal of blocking and muting functions on social media?
I think I'll have to speak to Tom about that one. But I think with the volume of content will be coming out of, there'll be no escaping. No amount of photoshopping people out of deserts is going to circumnavigate that.
Yeah. Fantastic, yes! Fantastic. Can you imagine Trump Park? Visions based on golf. Next up, we have Dr. Kat Arney. Dr. Kat Arney is a science writer and broadcaster. Her first book, Herding Hemingway's Cats, Understanding How Our Genes Work, is out now. And her second, How to Code a Human, is coming later this year. And a 5-part series, Did the Victorians Ruin the World?, written and presented with her sister science comedian Helen Arney, will be broadcast on BBC Radio 4 in April. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kat Arney!
I just can't afford to get any shorter. I'm really nervous about that. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my bad ad hoc hypothesis. As a geneticist, I thought it was very appropriate to present something that is geneticsy in tone, so I'm afraid we are going to have to do a bit of actual real science first. So, we know that through advances in DNA sequencing technology that around half of the human genome is junk. Don't call it junk. Every time someone says the word junk DNA, a graduate student dies. Please do not use the word junk DNA. It is, of course, non-coding DNA. And much of this non-coding DNA was derived from retroviruses, such as HIV, seen here. These are retroviruses that got into our genome millions and millions of years ago and have since copied and pasted themselves around. Now, this is broadly how it works. This is my really shitty diagram. So the viral RNA is basically copied into DNA, inserts into the genome. Through a similar copy-paste mechanism, these retroviruses make endless copies of themselves, spreading throughout the genome, hopping around, reproducing wildly, basically becoming completely degenerate and incoherent. It's like the world's best beach party. And in fact, actually, these viruses, they're not just, sitting around doing nothing in particular. Well, quite a lot of them are, to be honest. But some of them have been co-opted to become switches, control switches in our DNA that turn genes on and off. So some of these switches are used, for example, to turn on genes involved in the brain. Some are involved in the immune system. There's even viral-derived genes involved in human reproduction. And it may really surprise you to know that actually the difference between human faces and our closest primate relatives, chimps, these differences are down to viral-derived DNA sequences. So, although many of these viruses are very, very old and most of them are very, very dead, we actually do know that some of them do hop around. For example, 1 in every 20 newborn babies actually has a new retroviral insertion in its newborn DNA. Can I get an ah? Oh, new baby retrovirus. So cute. So, we do know that these viruses can still go on the move today. And actually, one of the things that tends to mobilize retroviruses is stress. This is effectively a way of reshuffling the genome. I mean, the consequences can be a bit chaotic at the time. You've got these viruses just hopping around, going wherever they want to go. But actually, it's a very powerful way of generating genetic diversity in a species. And at times of stress, you want new genetic variants to try and cope with the changing environment, the changing situation. And what has been more stressful than 2016? We've had a slew of celebrity deaths. We have, of course, had Brexit. We have had Trump. And I really don't think that this trend is going to stop here. This is actually the climate change graph, but it suits my purposes. So, I mean, that's pretty stressful as well, I'll give you that. But we can see that over time, stressful events in the human population are increasing year on year, and we can really see it shooting up very dramatically. So I believe that the trend of stress to the human population that started in 2016 and is only going to be set to continue, I think this could be a very powerful motivator for the evolution of humanity. And this is my hypothesis, that these stressful events of 2016 are actually triggering a quantum leap in human evolution, effectively reshuffling the deck of humanity, activating our retroviruses to generate entirely new types of human that can cope with the, oh my Jesus Christ, God, what have we let ourselves in for future that awaits us? Also coupled with what I like to call the Beckett response, which is the natural response of humans to seek out basically anyone to have sex with when things are getting really bad. We can see that these new retroviral insertions, these new genetic variations, will spread incredibly rapidly through the whole human population. This is powerful evolutionary fuel. So I think that there are a number of new genetic human variants that we can expect to see. For example, we can expect to see more luxuriant ear hair. Given that so many of our great musical icons have died, and that modern music is frankly shit, this ear hair will grow, it will block out the sounds of unwanted, just that wailing that comes out of Radio 1 now. Sorry, I think I just became my mum. The other thing we can expect, we can see changes in human pigmentation. For example, perhaps becoming more orange to fit in with our leaders. More seriously, I think that given also very strong selective pressure of a potential nuclear war with China, we might see radiation resistance spreading through the population. There are some other alternatives as well. Not only could the human genome, the genes involved in our metabolism, they could be reshuffled, also the microbiome, the bacteria growing inside us. I think there's real potential to actually have new metabolic variants that mean we could generate our own alcohol internally and just ride this one out in a beautiful, glorious, drunken haze. And finally, if all of that fails, we might hope to see genetic variants that lead to aluminium sequestration under the skin of the scalp. And we may generate our own tinfoil hats. I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think that this reshuffled deck, these activated retroviruses, could bring a glorious new future to humanity. I'd like you to welcome Human 2.0. And all of this is true. Please do buy my book. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Judges, your questions?
So the Icelanders had a pretty big shock with their economic crash a few years ago. Is there any solid evidence to show this kind of gene shuffling or gene manipulation happening to that kind of population?
I would be interested to know that, because the price of alcohol in Iceland is very, very high, but they all seem to be just having a brilliant time and jumping in and out of hot pools and all this, sort of taking their clothes off and things like that. So I think that particular variation is already kicking in.
So there's a lot of pressure on researchers to prove the wider impact of their work. So do you think there's anything in, say, being able to harvest the alcohol that we're producing so that we could, sell human gin, for example?
Wow. I like the way you're thinking.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, I mean, you would definitely want like some kind of sustainable source that could constantly be renewed. I think maybe replacing sperm banks with, I mean, it's like a ready-made cocktail for a start. Am I right, ladies? I don't know. It's an idea that I'll workshop that. Thank you.
Shaken, not stirred.
My work here is done.
Yeah, any other questions?
How do you spot the 1 in 20 baby?
Oh, no. Well, all of us are delightfully and beautifully mutant. So yeah, you would be looking out for really unusual traits. Maybe a mole, something like that. But yeah, it's very difficult to Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Fantastic. And now we come to Katherine Read. Katherine is a third-year medical student who has made the arduous journey here from where she studies at Imperial College London. The main thing she attributes to her 3 years of medicine is a newfound understanding of just how weird humans are. When she's not on the ward, she can be found in the Imperial Sci-Fi Society's library, where she continues to discover how weird humans can be. Ladies and gentlemen, Katherine Read!
Good evening. That actually wasn't the joke. Before I begin, I'd like you to take a moment to imagine a scrawny, repulsive specimen of an animal. Maybe something with patchy hair, fragile skin, and feeble muscles. Such an animal might look something like this. This is exactly what natural selection was designed to sift out of our population. So how on earth have humans survived? There is no logical reason for our distant ancestors to have decided to spend a romantic evening with the predecessor of something as supremely unappealing as a human, when they could have gone for the strapping young primates that gave way to the chimpanzee. Some people have proposed that we were selected for our intelligence. They argue that our larger skulls and better developed brains let us fashion tools and perfect skills that eventually rendered our physical strength, in fact, irrelevant. But while this may ease our own inferiority complex, the genetic record simply does not bear out. Ugliness predates intelligence. This is well illustrated by existing studies, which have found that the mutation in the MYH16 gene that led to our phenomenally useless, weak jaw muscles preceded the development of the first of our SRGAP2 gene replicates, which are responsible for our increased cortical development, by an estimated 2 million years. We are forced to conclude that ugliness drove intelligence, and not the other way round. But how could physical inadequacy be an evolutionary advantage? The answer I'd like to propose to you today is actually surprisingly simple. Humans became unattractive to escape venereal disease. Those who are attractive enough to find more than one potential partner, particularly the lucky few who are attractive enough to be chosen even by a partner with other options, are at a higher risk of infections by pathogens like chlamydia trachomatis and Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which can leave them infertile, unwell, or deceased. On the other side of the spectrum, pairs who only manage to mate with each other are protected. We can split a species into 4 groups by their aesthetic appeal: the super attractive, the moderately attractive, the unattractive, and the subattractive. So, normally, as you can see here, we'd expect reproductive success to increase along with beauty, but the potential to contract a venereal disease changes this pattern dramatically. I have had some difficulty in persuading an ethics panel to let me rank a test population by beauty and then introduce gonorrhea into their midst. But I've modelled what I think might have happened and what I believe happened millions of years into our past here. So, as in the previous scenario, the least attractive group still failed to mate often enough to maintain their population. But on the other side of the spectrum, the most attractive group finds so many partners that they basically have to resign themselves to venereal infection being a fact of life. But they're so prolific that they manage to pass on their genes to the next generation before the disease even takes hold, albeit with a more tightly controlled population size. So the point where we really start to see a difference is in the moderately attractive group. They find enough partners that they're likely to contract infections, but in their case, the lower rate of mating means the diseases kill or sterilize them before they manage to reproduce. I'd actually like to posit that this was the fate of our better-looking cousins, the Neanderthals. And actually, some studies do suggest that not only were Neanderthals responsible for introducing HPV into the human population, but the diseases they contracted in turn may have played a role in their own extinction. The final group, the unattractive, is the one into which our distant predecessors fell. They fell into an evolutionary sweet spot where they mated just about enough to maintain a population, but still infrequently enough to mostly avoid venereal disease. So since the populations of the less hideous primates were controlled by infection, we managed to flourish where we should rightly have died out. Once the 2 surviving groups were distinguished, they developed in a predictable pattern. Humans, as the offspring of a group of aesthetically inadequate rejects, lived long lives unhindered by venereal disease, while chimpanzees had to evolve to cope with it. Young chimpanzees had to mature quickly before their parents were incapacitated by disease. But for the unattractive, on the other hand, a longer period of development was crucial, most likely to give young humans the chance to slowly, gently come to terms with their own repugnancy. course, humans had to become intelligent enough to produce things like art, poetry, and science if they wanted to fool each other into finding themselves remotely palatable. But their newfound capacity for self-awareness could easily have driven early humans to the brink of insanity. Luckily, instead, this intelligence was funneled into vital innovations like knives, spears, cosmetic enhancement. And lastly, while humans remained sensitive to venereal disease, chimpanzees had to become better able to resist it. And it turns out that they've actually sped up their immune systems as a way to deal with their chronic good looks. The beauty kills hypothesis even offers a few explanations for quirks of human nature, like the urge to dump a partner who cheats on you as swiftly and brutally as possible. This can only be the evolutionary result of millions of years of infection control. And we've all experienced that feeling of intimidation when someone is just too attractive. Simply put, when you see a pretty human, you fear them because you think they're probably from a different species. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Modern medicine has managed to stem the tidal wave of venereal infection for now. But with the looming threat of the antibiotic resistance crisis, our population may be on the verge of fracturing into the weak and the strong once more. Thank you.
So, judges, any thoughts, questions?
So how are you going to nobble the ethics committee?
Sorry, what was that?
How are you going to nobble the ethics committee?
I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure they're ever going to get round this problem. I suspect we may have to work our way up, starting at bacteria, and maybe increasing, perhaps along the way we could use Simon's lobsters and gradually get towards humans.
So what would you predict for hipsters who are hairy and promiscuous?
That's an interesting problem. So I suspect for them, I would have to do the maths. They could fall
It might be
within...
easier to get ethics permission.
So they'll, if they're lucky, they'll come under the wait, which group? The super attractive group. If they're unlucky, they might come with a moderately attractive. So it could really go either way for them.
I've got a question about why do humans find each other attractive at all when we're so objectively disgusting? I'm asking for a friend, obviously.
I suspect it's basically because we have no other option. I may have to decline to answer that question on the basis of conflict of interest, since... Quite a few of my friends are in the audience.
Anything else, judges? No. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And now we come to our final speaker, Mr. Ed Thorne. Ed is a writer, improviser, and software engineer. He is so devoted to biology that his own body is actually made of biological matter. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Thorne!
Good evening. Today I'm going to be talking about cracking the C-value enigma. We like to think of DNA as encoding for characteristics like strength, intelligence, or eye color. But in reality, this kind of DNA is massively in the minority. Almost all of the human genome is made up of non-coding DNA. But you know this already because you listened to Kat. But if you're joining us just now on YouTube, I'm blowing your mind here. So yeah, a lot of the human genome, the majority of the human genome is made up of this non-coding or junk DNA. Sorry, Kat. Which begs the question of what exactly is it doing there? Why do we have all this DNA that's basically useless? Now, if you're a so-called expert, you can talk about retroviruses and gene switches, and I think we've had enough of listening to experts. So yeah, instead, we propose the Histiaeus hypothesis. The Histiaeus hypothesis states that the reason that we have so much of this non-functional DNA inside the human genome is because it's being used as a hard drive by aliens. So the first question this raises is, why? Why would aliens want to use the human genome for data storage? And we're going to answer this question through the lens of a tech review. You have the option between using the human genome or using a solid-state drive. Which is your discerning extraterrestrial civilization going to choose? Well, firstly, you're going to have to build your hard drives. And if you're building a solid-state drive, you're going to need access to lots of really rare elements. You're going to need to mine and refine rare earth minerals. You're going to need silicon or germanium if you're from one of those fancy planets. And when they run out, basically, you don't really have any options but to go and strip mine another planet or to do nuclear fusion, which is tough. DNA, by contrast, is made up of abundant elements like carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen, and it makes more of itself, which is great as a building material. So obviously the human genome is better in this respect. Secondly, you want something that's durable. So now that we've built our hard drives, we're going to drop them off onto Earth-like planets with our data on them, and we're going to come back in a few billion years and see what happens. When we come back to the human planet, we find they've multiplied. We've got more hard drives than we started with. And they've created civilization, they've created medicine that makes them even more durable than they were. They've improved themselves. Our data is safer than ever. So, with an optimistic heart, we go to the solid-state drive planet where... Right. Yeah, so they haven't reproduced at all, which is appalling. They've decayed. Our data's probably... They haven't started any civilizations. I mean, come on. So our data's probably lost. But let's say that some of the units survive. So step 3, resilience. We pick up one of the solid-state drives and carry it into our spaceship. But disaster strikes. We drop it. It probably doesn't explode, but it shatters and you lose the data, which is, that defeats the whole purpose. Human, similar tragedy. It's actually not a big deal. The DNA within an individual is massively redundant, and it's quite difficult to accidentally destroy through trauma, so actually, your data's recoverable and everything's okay. So now I've convinced you that the human genome is great as a data storage format. What predictions does this theory actually make? Well, firstly, we would expect aliens to come back from time to time to retrieve their data. And it makes sense that this would look like abducting a human, making them... I see we've got some sequel fans in the audience. Abducting a human, subjecting them to some kind of medical procedure to extract a sample of their DNA, and then dropping them. Yeah. But the thing about the human genome is obviously we don't all have the exact same copy of DNA. It varies, roughly geographically. You don't want to keep going to the same spot, abducting the same kind of group of humans. You want to get a good distribution. So you want to leave behind some kind of marker that's visible from the sky, but is temporary and will vanish after a couple of seasons. Crop circles are perfect for this purpose. So the next time you take a sample, you just find an area that doesn't have any crop circles and take your sample from there. So an obvious question is, if the human genome is being used for data storage, which by this point, I'm convinced, what kind of data are aliens storing on it? And the first clue is that obviously DNA isn't static, it mutates over time. And this immediately means that it's not great for storing something like text, because even a small amount of corruption in a text file will quickly render it unreadable. By contrast, multimedia can tolerate quite large amounts of corruption, so pictures and audio and video are all fine and still basically usable, they just get slightly degraded. So aliens are presumably storing multimedia in the human genome. What multimedia? Well, let's look at human usage. In 2013, it was reported that about 15% of the internet, whatever that means, was being used for cat videos. Yeah. We're going there. So, and indeed, if we look at the human genome with an eye for looking for cat videos, we do find what appear to be metadata tags for... I'm loving the slow clap ratio here. Oh yeah, so this is the problem with DNA, which is that it's really slow to retrieve it. You've got to sequence it, you've got to convert it, it's a whole nightmare. What you want is some kind of preview mechanism to see what you're about to access before you go to the trouble of accessing it. So like how with YouTube, we have thumbnails that let us preview what we're going to see before we click on a funny animal video. We would... Don't read them, it's just... We would... We would expect aliens to have come up with some kind of equivalent. Now, obviously, thumbnails don't really make sense in this context. What you want is some kind of large image of a funny alien animal that's visible from space and has no real business otherwise being there. Ladies and gentlemen, over 1,000 years ago, the Nazcan people trudged out into the desert in Peru and drew the Nazca lines, which show alien animals that do not exist on Earth. They went to massive effort, trudged out into the desert in the blistering heat, and drew pictures of animals that don't exist. Can I point out, other theories of non-coding DNA, Kat, do not begin to explain how the Nazca lines got there. And that in itself is proof enough for me of the Histiaeus hypothesis. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Horrifying. Judges, any questions?
So, I mean, I'm a physicist, so, you know,
congratulations.
tread lightly. How do you reconcile your hypothesis of aliens dropping humans on Earth with something I think I've heard of called evolution?
I can't.
Thank you.
But I will, nonetheless. Right, so we do know that humans and basically all life do share a huge amount of DNA. I mean, I know, speaking as a geneticist, which I am not, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that humans share like 99% of our DNA with a banana. So probably what happened was some kind of panspermia where life was seeded here like in a very early evolutionary stage, and then it's kind of evolved into humans. They didn't originally drop off humans, but because the bulk of the genome has still basically remained constant, it's still there for usage.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So you're saying that the aliens dropped the humans built the civilizations and the pyramids and so on. So this is far more sensible than our current understanding, which is that the aliens built the pyramids.
I know, right?
What happens if our media becomes obsolete and they move on to like Blu-ray or something?
Then the human race is doomed.
I was already scared. Could we use ourselves to send messages to aliens, like, please, please take me away from here?
I mean, yeah, with the whole genetic manipulation thing, which I'm told is cool with the kids these days, yeah. I I mean, the chances of you getting abducted are, I am assuming, quite low. There are things you can do, actually. There are steps you can take to make yourself more likely to get abducted. They've done surveys of like how likely a given individual is to get abducted and certain traits. So what you want to do is convince like a kindly geneticist to manipulate your genome, put a message in there, and then adopt all the traits at once that make you get abducted. And then that's what happens. and that's that's the scientific process. From a certain point of view.
Anyone else?
How concerned do you think the aliens are about Louis right now, given his space debris shield that he's going to put around the Earth?
I bet they're shitting themselves.
Do you have any more information on the data retrieval system? What actually happens when they're in the alien craft?
Oh boy, I'm glad you asked. No.
Shrouded in mystery.
I'm guessing what they want to do is extract like enough that they can kind of cultivate like a tissue sample. I don't do science. They could just take a blood sample or whatever, but I'm betting they want to be able to like grow a culture of cells so that they don't have to frequently come back. They can kind of take it back to the home planet and then cultivate that DNA and keep reading it for future use. So, but that's just a hunch.
I think you'll find stories tell they use a large number of proctoscopes.
Yeah, I was being delicate. It's an important trait in a scientist. Shying away from an awkward truth.
Any other questions? No.
Oh, thank you.
Right. So that's it. So judges, if you'd like to start tallying up your scores and have a think about who was the best and who wasn't the best. But emphasis on who was the best because this is cool. We're now going to do the audio. We're going to do the. We're going to do you. We're going to do you now. That would have been an enormous happy ending, wouldn't it? Don't think I got it in me. We're going to. I'm very tired. We're going to do the decimeter test now, because anyone could have like a clapometer. Well, not us, because we're all about science and coolness. We're going to have a decimeter, which basically works like a clapometer, where I will read out the name of an act who was on, who's speaking, and you will applaud, depending on how much you loved them. And then we're going to take a measure, and then we're just going to keep that measurement for later in case it's a tie or it's awkward. We need to decide from you. So, obviously everyone was brilliant, so lots of love, but some people you would have liked slightly more than others. So that's when you give them an extra boost. But let's make it like awesome anyway, because they were all awesome. I think we can all agree. There was some amazing stuff there. I have no idea about science, and I both followed it and was baffled by it, and amazed and horrified at the same time. So I think it's all done its job impeccably. So I'll read out everyone's name we saw, and then we will give you a chance to... Ready? So the first one. We'll just have the first one for Simon Watt. Splendid. Hey? Titles 2. Oh, yes, sorry. I don't remember. It was... I've only got their names. He was the lobster man. He was the lobster man. Next up, we have Louis Tyrell, who wanted to stop us going into space. Then we have Phillippa Skett with her Clone Wars story. Phillippa Skett, everybody! Now we have another non-coding DNA of Dr. Kat Arney. We're all ugly, Katherine Read. VCRs of the gods, Ed Thorne. So, are the votes in? Are we there? Are we excited?
Very close.
It's very close, was it? Are we ready to go? So it's okay. So that's the way. So we're just gonna go. So basically, we're not doing in reverse. So we're not doing in reverse order. We're not doing sixth place because it's not fair. There is no second. There's only the winner. I like to think in many ways tonight the winner has been science, which is the most, which is really the most important thing. It's not the most important. It's not the most important thing. The important thing is the actual winner, who wins the winner of the Best Ad Hoc Hypothesis Award for 2007. They get that awesome trophy and some money.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, just get it out.
Oh, no. Actually did
Some
it.
money, yeah. Keep it in the sock. Can't trust these guys. And the winner for this year's Bad Ad Hoc Thesis Award is Katherine Read!
All I can say is that you've responded very well to what is probably a shielded insult. Thank you.
Yeah. Amazing, brilliant. Well, it's the end of the show. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you've had a great time. Before I go to the few thank yous we need to do, we need to thank, obviously, Imperial College, the Royal College of Science Union as well. Yes. Lloyd James, sorting everything out. Amanda Rossi, Michael Johnson, all the volunteers who helped to run the show. Got Zach's parents and parents-in-law who are watching the kids while he gallivants around London. Obviously the judges, the speakers, the judges who are awesome. The speakers who did some amazing hypothesizing, seizing. Some of them have got books, and they'll be signing them later if you want to go downstairs. They'll be with books and, stuff. Books. Everyone loves books, right? And let's not forget you for being an awesome audience. Give yourselves a round of applause for being amazing. Yeah. Thank you for watching online. Keep clicking on the ads. Click on the ads. We're not in this for our health. And my name's Richard Sanning. Thanks very much for coming. Have a brilliant evening and a great rest of your weekend. Thank you very much. Good night.